Subscribe to our YouTube channel and press the bell icon to never miss a video from Fever FM.
Hi guys, welcome to a very special episode of Stutee's Book Club. If you like reading books, if you like listening to authors, if you love buying books, reading books, or even a book hoarder, then this is where you should be. और इस वक्त अगर आप हमें सुन रहे हैं या देख रहे हैं, मैं जल्दी से introduce करा दूँ the very special guest who's here with me today. He's none other than Kabir Bedi. अब इससे पहले कि आप इन्हें देखें, अगर आप वीडियो देखते हैं आप of course देखेंगे, but I want that you shut your eyes and just listen to his voice when he says hello to all of us.
Hi Stutee, how are you? Wonderful
I'm
to be on your
good.
book club. Thank you for that wonderful introduction.
Thank you. You know, why I'm so excited to be speaking to you. You started your career with radio. Radio has a very special place in my heart as well. And I thought it was such a fascinating story about you getting the Beatles as a young 22-year-old when you were working with All India Radio. So in a way, it's homecoming, huh?
Absolutely. It's radio has always been very special to me because I began there. And that whole interview, the Beatles that followed my employment with All India Radio, is one of the most entertaining of my many entertaining stories.
Yes.
But, you know, I had to work my way through college because my parents' idealistic beliefs, there wasn't any money in the till. And working for All India Radio is one of the ways that I made money. And because I was working for All India Radio, when the Beatles came into town, I decided to use the fact that I was working for All India Radio to try and get an interview with them. And then how I tracked down the manager and pressured him by making him feel that the government of India would get angry.
Yeah.
He didn't give me the interview is a story in itself, a very entertaining story, but that's part of the book.
Absolutely.
But meeting the Beatles was just extraordinary. They were not just great musicians, they symbolized all the excitement of the 1960s and the age of counterculture, protests, hippies, psychedelic clothes, a whole new lifestyle, a whole rebellion against the old order. It was a very special generation that gave the world many special people with new thinking and new thoughts, and signaled the emergence of a new social order as well.
That's so true, and all these stories that are so fascinating. Actually, you can find all of them here. So, Kabir Bedi is someone who's done theatre, films here and abroad, radio, and of course now is an author. And this is his autobiography, Stories I Must Tell: The Emotional Life of an Actor, which has been published by Westland. So, congratulations, pehle to. Kamal
Thank
kar
you
diya
so much.
aapne.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That is the whole point of writing a book. लोगों को मजा आना चाहिए, क्योंकि लाइफ स्टोरी कहना, बताना, लिखना एक चीज है, लेकिन जो पढ़ रहे हैं उनको भी एक मजा मिलना चाहिए. ये नहीं कि मैंने ये किया वो किया. जो भी मेरी जिंदगी के ड्रामास हैं उसका पूरा मजा लें तो बात बनती है. और इसके साथ इस आत्मकथा में मैंने अपने दिल की गहराइयों की बात की है. इसमें कहानियां हैं रिश्तों की, मेरे संघर्षों की, गजब की सफलताओं की और मेरी गलतियों की भी. और ये भी बताया कि किस तरह मैंने और किस साहस से मैंने बॉलीवुड, यूरोप और हॉलीवुड के रोमांचक उतार चढ़ाव को पार किया. इसमें कई जीते भी हैं जिन्होंने इंडिया को गौरवान्वित किया. तो इस किताब में बहुत सी चीजें हैं जिसे उम्मीद करता हूं कि लोगों को मजा आए पढ़ने में.
फिलहाल तो मुझे आपकी बातें सुनने में बड़ा मजा आ रहा है, क्योंकि एक तो आपकी ये जो मैग्निफिसेंट वॉइस है और उसमें आपकी जो कमांड है ओवर बोथ द लैंग्वेजेस. आई थिंक this has a reason. This is of course one of the reasons why you did so well in Bollywood, Hollywood, and you're also a knight, by the way. You have the highest civilian honor
from Italy. Yes,
from Italy, which is amazing.
That is because I had this incredible success with a television series called Sandokan that made me a star across Europe. And that was the beginning of my relationship with Italy. Since then, I've done many other television series there, many other films there. And I've always promoted Italy in India, India in Italy. And in appreciation of my lifetime work in film and promoting both countries to each other, they honored me with the high civilian honor, Cavaliere, which is the equivalent of being knighted. So Italy has given me more honor than any other country in the world.
That is brilliant. Acha, so abhi kitab jab maine shuru ki, and the first chapter itself, the story that we started our conversation today with about you managing to get that interview with Beatles, was not just a fascinating story in itself, but it reveals so much about you, this young fellow who's unafraid, aims high, and is brave enough to fulfill his dream. So that kind of set the tone for where you were headed, and this incredible journey that you've had with all its highs and lows. और एक और चीज that stands out is जब एक public figure, a celebrity like you, decides to write a book, तो of course एक तो acknowledgement है कि यार life में कुछ कर दिया है, तो अब किताब लिखी जाए, अब वो बात लोगों तक पहुंचाई जाए. And a lot of times we tend to focus on the amazing aspects of our lives, जो चीजें हमने अच्छी की हैं, but you've managed to keep a balance between the great things that you've done, the hard work that you've put in, and also your lows, the mistakes, the tragedies, the times you felt frustrated. Were there bits that you wanted, you had difficulty penning down, you wanted to keep away from the public while writing this book?
Not really. I mean, once I was clear that I wanted to tell my story, I wanted to tell it as authentically as I could, as honestly as I could. And the only way I could be honest with the feelings of others is if I talked about my own feelings. Otherwise, I don't want to paint myself as being some kind of superhero and everyone are devils in my life. They're not. There are many things I would have done differently. There's many things that other people should have done differently. But this is the whole point of writing the story, is to tell it like it is. And you mentioned this first chapter, how it sets the tone. It was a very conscious decision because I have many stories. I could have started off with any story. You can shuffle the pack like a pack of cards and start with any story in my book. And each story is complete in itself, and yet the totality gives you my life. So why did I start with this chapter? Because अगर मैं प्रतिमा का चैप्टर शुरू करता, उसमें बहुत सी उम्मीदें हैं कि इसमें love, romance, drama, all kinds of things will happen. With Parveen Babi, same thing. इसमें पता नहीं क्या लिखा है इसने परवीन बाबी के बारे में, किस किस्म की औरत थी वो, किस किस्म का अनुभव रहा वो. All those things are also very attractive. But then I thought, if I start with those chapters, people won't know who I am. And there's a very important question that I read in one of these great filmmakers say. He said, ask yourself when you're telling a story, why should the audience be interested in your main character? We put a star in that role. We think people love stars, so they are interested. What if that person was not a star? Would the audience still be interested in that character? So the way I looked at it was, let people understand who I am. Let them feel what I feel. Let them know the kind of bare bones background that I came from. Very cultured, but very very starved for money. And yet what I managed to get and how I broke through, then they're with me when I come to Mumbai, join advertising, meet Pratima and all that followed, and then join Bollywood and what happened with Parveen Babi, then go on to other aspects of my life, which crossed 3 continents, and how a Delhi boy becomes an international star. These are entertaining things for people to know and read. But that chapter was very important to define who made that journey.
Bilkul. And I must say that this story, Kabir Bedi's life story, actually reads like a film script. So, just तरीके से जब हम film discuss करते हैं, you don't want to give out the story, right? So I'm going to be very careful because we want you to read this. If you haven't picked it up, make sure you do. You can order it online or go to your nearest bookstore and get a copy of this one. तो हम ज़्यादा जिन्होंने नहीं पढ़ी है उनको वो मेन क्लाइमैक्स तो हम नहीं रिवील करेंगे, बट if I were to ask you to pick out 3 most significant points, memories in your life, which one would those be? That now looking back with the benefit of hindsight, you'd say, well, those were definitely life-changing.
I wrote a wonderful chapter on my parents and the kind of people they were, and how they transitioned from being revolutionaries for India's freedom struggle to becoming major religious figures. But that moment when I saw my mother suddenly in the maroon robes of a Tibetan Buddhist nun, head shaved bald, rosary around her neck, and the feeling that I've lost my mother. And how dare she take this step without talking to me? I was a confidant. I shared her journey into Buddhism. I even became a Buddhist monk for 3 months of my life in Burma. How could she do this without telling me? That moment was a pivotal moment for me. And I was in college at that time. And I couldn't understand why she did it. And she said 2 things to me. One thing to me. She said, "Who decides when an apple falls to the ground?" And I had a great communion with my mother. In that sentence, I understood what she said, that it was a step she had to take because that's where the apple was ripe and it had to fall. And secondly, I understood that if she told me, even though I was very close to her, she would have had to tell my brother, she would have had to tell my sister, she would have to tell, and God knows what firestorms that would have created in preventing her doing this. So that is one moment. The other great moment was when I was in Italy and I experienced the euphoria of massive stardom. And with Parveen Babi beside me, we look out from the window of the Excelsior Hotel in Via Veneto, where we were staying in Rome, and look out at the bookstore across the road, and we see that we are on every single magazine cover. That was the media storm that it was. That moment sticks in my memory. And then again, being in a James Bond film as an Indian villain, the first Indian to play a major role in a Bond film, and then coming to India to shoot those sequences at the magnificent Lake Palace Hotel in Udaipur with all the magical connotations that has. That was again a big high for me. I am in a Bond film seen by millions worldwide with a fan following of God knows how many hundreds of millions, shooting in India as an Indian actor for the Bond film. That was another great high for me. You said 3, I give you 3.
Super. No, these are, and while you were talking about these, I was recalling all that I had read in the book and how fascinating, that whole read was. एक chapter particularly, I know एक बहुत high के बाद हम थोड़ा low में जा रहे हैं, but why I bring this chapter up is I was a little hesitant to read it since I've lost someone very close to me a month back. I lost my father, and
I'm very sorry to hear that. Very sorry to hear that. My deepest condolences.
Thank you. But when you've written this chapter with so much honesty, and I can just imagine how difficult that would be to relive those moments and to visualize it again and then put pen to paper.
It was very hard to go back there because it was traumatic that my son committed suicide, and what I experienced in the process of trying to prevent him taking that step, and all the dramas that involved, and the emotional scenes that involved, and the dilemmas that involved for me, and the aftermath of that, and the guilt of that. I had come to terms with that. Not that the sense of loss ever goes away.
Hmm.
But you come to terms with it because ultimately life has to go on. But then when writing it, to revisit that and reopen those wounds and go back in was not easy. But the only way I could tell that story was to let people feel they were there with me at every step of the way. And I described what happened day by day, and not every day, but all the biggest events that happened along the way, and how and why it happened. I must say that today medicines are much better, and therefore the prognosis of people with problems like that, of mental problems, are much better. But having said that, the loss of any child for a parent is a soul-shattering loss. But when that child is on the cusp of a brilliant career in the internet world, at the dawn of the internet age, having graduated from Carnegie Mellon, it becomes even more tragic. And it becomes even even more brutal in terms of the way you feel about the lost potential and what might have been. So all those things I explore in a very heartfelt chapter. There was no other way to do it except tell it as with all the emotional rawness that involved, and to share that with people. Because I think that's part of the experience of reading my book. You experience tremendous highs and you experience tremendous sorrow as well. It's part of the tapestry and experience of reading my book, which is based on an experience of a lifetime across 3 continents, many relationships, many marriages. That's my life.
When I was reading it, and to just put things in perspective, you were talking about a time when this word diversity wasn't really being bandied around. It was a different world. You're this young man from Delhi, India, out there, and you've written a lot about that in the book, about how it was okay to make a white person brown, and roles were not being written for you. You felt a little let down. You thought your potential wasn't being explored. Do you sometimes feel like if you, if the times were different, if it was probably now, like say a Priyanka Chopra and others, and there's certain things that you just can't do anymore, like diversity is a major issue, and the world is slowly waking up to that. Would your life had turned out to be different and a little easier than it was?
Maybe. Because one of the biggest problems I faced in Hollywood, even after all the stardom I had in Europe, was they didn't care about what happened outside America. So I had to start from the ground up in Hollywood. Secondly, they weren't writing roles. So if they aren't writing roles for Indians, what am I going to be cast in? So we protested this. We did think, but who cared about protesting actors? Excuse me. What I did was I said, I'm going to play foreign roles. I will play roles that are non-American, because if they want an American, they can get an American. There's enough Americans around here. So I was cast as, the prince in The Thief of Baghdad. It was Roddy McDowell. I was cast as a Tuareg tribesman with Michael Caine in Ashanti. I played Germans. I played Russians. I played all kinds of characters of different nationalities. Even in The Bold and the Beautiful, which is the longest running series, the most popular series in the world at that time, second only to Baywatch, I played a Moroccan prince. So my strategy was to find foreign roles, but it wasn't easy. I am so thrilled by the success of Priyanka Chopra today, because she has done what I set out to do. She has, today it is easier because diversity is an issue, as you said. Casting is, different ethnicities is a policy. In those days, they didn't think anything of taking a white actor and painting him brown for a role that suited me. So it's easier for Priyanka, but I don't want to take anything away from Priyanka's glory. No matter how easier it is, it's a very difficult business. And Priyanka has certainly done brilliantly. In that, I'm also very grateful to Priyanka because she launched my book. I've known her since the very first film she did, Hero, Story Was Spy, directed by Anil Sharma. And that was her first film, and I played her father. So we had a wonderful relationship throughout. So I'm one of the biggest supporters of Priyanka Chopra, and I root for her success. She's made India proud.
You know, एक और चीज जब आप किताब पढ़ेंगे आप समझेंगे, it's also a very self-aware book. You've been very honest and made no bones about the fact that your life was perceived by the media in a particular way, especially the fact that your relationship with women, and you also have been very lucky because you've been surrounded by some very, very strong women, be it your mother, your daughter, your wives, or your other relationships. जब आप chapter लिख रहे थे on Pratima Bedi or Parveen Babi, and you knew that there's going to be a lot of interest. People, these are those sensational bits that people look out for. What did you keep in mind? Because you are a public figure who's going to make public his side of the story. So what was going on here?
Well, I couldn't whitewash things. I couldn't tiptoe around the fact that Pratima had been India's first streaker. So how does a man feel if his wife runs naked in public? All that I've shared in my book. How did our marriage transition to becoming an open marriage? This also I've had to share because that's what happened. What leads to infidelities? How do they go out of control? How do you deal with it? All that I've had to share because that's part of the fabric of my life. When Parveen, for instance, eventually decided to come back to India after having moved abroad with me, living with me in London, came back to India. The Indian press jumped on the fact and started behaving irrationally out here. The Indian press jumped on the fact that Parveen was driven crazy because her relationship with me did not work out, and I was responsible for her condition. And terrible things were written about me. And I always thought, truth will out, people will realize. But I've realized truth doesn't out sometimes. You have to tell it. You have to tell exactly what happened. And I have shared whatever happened with Parveen in terms of the joys of our relationship, the problems of our relationship, the dealing with her mental problems. I think, and I've done it without vindictiveness. There's no malice. There's no. It's done with great compassion and feeling, but it's not. But I've told it like it is, and the truth sometimes is difficult, and I had to tell it as honestly as I could, because that is the only way that people would understand my story from my point of view. Because whether I'm writing a chapter on Pratima or Parveen, or my son or anybody, I'm ultimately writing my story. I'm telling my story, and that was the object of my book. See my life through my eyes and enjoy the journey, be entertained by it, be horrified by it, be thrilled by it, but this is my story.
Super. Acha, I was, of course, preparing for this interview, and past couple of days, the Aamir Khan, Kiran Rao divorce saga kind of, that was playing out in the media, and I was just thinking that jitna bhi waqt badal jaye, somehow, Indians and then me to want to comment on everyone, particularly the lives of public figures and who they're with and who they're not with, doesn't really change. People have different perspectives. Some say that what Aamir did with that video, saying it loud and clear, telling people that he's, they're no longer together, was a welcome step, because in India, there's this taboo around divorce and how people view it and are very, very judgmental. You've had to face it also, ageism, the fact that you decided to marry someone who was very young, and how people weren't sure about it. And do you think that was something that hurt you? Would it affect you? Would it get to you what people would say about you and your relationships?
Yeah, everything affects you, but you can't. let it run your life. I mean, it's a good question to me because I have been divorced 3 times and married 4 times. And that itself gives rise to a lot of gossip and gives people the illusion that all I do is run from one woman to another. But if that was really me, why would I get married so often? Why wouldn't I stay single and just be footloose and fancy free and have all the freedoms of being single? Fact is, I believe in marriage, and I've always searched for the kind of marriage that I wanted. It didn't work out for various reasons, which I've explained in my book. But eventually, I found a beautiful woman who has given me great joy, and I feel I have found the love I was searching for, and I found great satisfaction with Kabir Bedi, who married me, and she took her time accepting my proposal and even longer actually getting married. Because she wanted to be sure of me. I was in her mind, she called me a repeat offender. so I had to prove myself to her. But of course, everything that's said in the press, and when we got married, the press made a meal out of the fact that she's 28 years younger than me. That's what they'll say because that makes for good headlines. But for me, you know, in my spirit, I'm 25 years old. In my body, I'm 50 years old. In my spiritually, I'm 5,000 years old. How old am I? I'm as old as my being tells me I am.
Yeah.
And Parveen also is wiser than her years. So there's a great meeting of minds, a great meeting of souls, and hopefully a great meeting of bodies too.
Absolutely. No, you write about her with so much love in the book. So you know, I really enjoyed reading those. And this is also a great segue for my next question. You spoke about feeling young. You really must share with us this elixir of life or whatever it is that keeps you so young. What is it?
Well, you know, I think firstly, I'm genetically blessed. Secondly, I did work out a lot at one time. I don't do it as often now, although I should do more. I am careful about what I eat. I'm in a very loving relationship. That certainly helps. But I do have a little nuskha that I take every day. I'm not saying it's the answer. Talk to your own doctor. I'm not a doctor. But every day I have half a spoon of haldi, half spoon of cinnamon, dalchini, and I add to it black pepper, a little honey, and a little oil. And that's my mixture. To that, you can add ginger and garlic if you like. But basically, that I've taken every day for the last 5 years, and I haven't had a cold. Consult your own doctor, but that's my nuskha.
ये ना सबने ऐसे ध्यान से note down किया होगा. So thanks for sharing that. Finally, you know, I had such a great time talking to you. But finally, like I said, हम हर चीज तो रिलीज नहीं करेंगे. But एक जो जज्बा है आपका, जिस तरीके से दिल्ली का लड़का है, तो अपने शहर का लड़का है, तो you know, one feels really really proud. और आपने in a way दुनिया जीत ली है. What is that quality that you attribute this to, जो आपने है?
Firstly, dreaming big. Secondly, perseverance. Thirdly, never say die. Fourthly, eternally be optimistic. My last words in my book are, I believe the best is yet to come, for I'm the eternal optimist. I am an optimist. I think positivism is a great force, a great life force that releases creative energies. और क्रिएटिविटी जब आप में उभर आती है तो आपका पूरा नजरिया बदल जाता है, पूरी जिंदगी बदल जाती है. Because ultimately your life is shaped by what you believe, and I believe in positivity, and I think that reflects in my book in the way that I've survived my adversities, and also how I've handled my successes, because there are dangers in both success and failure, and I've talked about them all.
Super. And ये सिर्फ कहने के लिए नहीं बोल रहे हैं, because your life stories prove that you know you've diligently followed all of these, and no wonder you're shining still.
I'm standing and celebrating and wishing that people take the trouble to buy my book, read it, enjoy it, and be enriched by it.
Absolutely. So, ये तो हम definitely करेंगे. Thank you so much, Kabir Bedi. We love to see you on screen, and we love this book. By the way, any other book that you're planning to write?
I'm taking lots of notes, jotting down lots of ideas. I'm sure there will be another book. But in the meantime, I'm trying to persuade people to read my book and tell them why they should read my book. But thank you so much for hosting me on your wonderful book club, Stutee. I'm most grateful. And I look forward to talking to you again in the future. बहुत बहुत शुक्रिया आपका.
Thank you. Thank you.